Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Bocconi. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome all the Master of Science students who are starting their program today. First of all, congratulations to all of you. You have succeeded in being selected for our Master of Science programs, and let me say, we received many applications and the selection was really tough. You achieved a great result, however, now it's a starting point. In fact, today you are at the very beginning of the new adventure. I'm certain that this adventure will be very important for all of you and for your future career and also for your personal growth. And, well, I know that you all already met the directors of your programs, and I can see some of the directors here. Thank you for coming. The director of the program is the key referent for each class. And, well, they already told you for sure a lot about programs, about rules, about life at Bocconi. I want just to add a few words. First of all, I want to say that your commitment, your engagement will be extremely relevant in the next 2 years. I recommend that you attend lessons, be proactive and passionate, think out of the box, leave the campus. These attitudes are extremely relevant, not only to develop your knowledge and competencies, but also to acquire a critical thinking approach that will be essential in your future. In fact, such an approach will allow you to address the complex challenges that are increasingly impacting our society and economic systems. Think of geopolitical issues, disruptive technology transformation, cultural diversity. You have to be ready for all these challenges. And last but not least, I strongly recommend that you develop relationships with your classmate and professor. You are part of the Bocconi community. And this is important, and the network you are going to develop during the next 2 years will be very important also for your future after your graduation, when you enter the job market and become Bocconi alumni. The next 2 years will be tough. You will have to study a lot, to be very focused on your lessons and exams. But please consider that Bocconi is not only lessons and courses. Bocconi will offer much more than that to you. For example, recruiting activities, meetings with companies, arts and cultural events, sport events in our wonderful, new wonderful sport center. And also Milan, it's a great capital, full of exciting opportunities. And let me just mention the Super Salone, the great event that is underway these days. And it's a special event, as usual, for Milan, but in particular in this moment, after the pandemic period that has been really difficult. And well, now it's up to you. It's up to you to take full advantage of all these opportunities to make the next 2 years really a transformative experience. And this experience commences now with our welcome event. And I am delighted to introduce the rector to you, Professor Gianmario Verona, with a welcome address to the class 2021-2022. Who will present Bocconi, its history and its values. And I am honored to have Corrado Passera, founder and CEO of illimity Bank, who will deliver the keynote speech. And let me introduce our guest speaker. Corrado Passera received a degree in business administration from Bocconi University in 1977. In 1980, he received his MBA from Wharton School in Philadelphia. Mr. Passera has had an impressive career. He has held a key leadership role in both private and public companies, in many industries, and in particular in the financial sector. He served as a minister of the Italian government. His CV is impressive, and it would require too much time to tell you all about the positions he covered and the achievements he obtained. It took some time to me to summarize his CV. I told him before, but I decided to mention three of these important positions. The first in the financial sector. In 1996, he joined Banco Ambroveneto, one of the most dynamic financial institutions in Italy. Under his tenure, Ambroveneto led one of the country's most prominent consolidation processes in the Italian financial sector through its merger with the Cariplo, the country's leading saving bank, thus creating a new entity named Banca Intesa that you already are familiar with. A second impressive achievement was the turnaround of Poste Italiane, and this is a story I still like to talk about to my students. In 1998, Mr. Passera joined Poste Italiane that was on the brink of liquidation. During the following years, Poste Italiane underwent a deep operational and cultural transformation, which was carried out with the direct engagement of the company's 160,000 employees and in cooperation with the trade unions. The turnaround of Poste Italiane was very successful, and Mr. Passera increased the business and profitability, also developing new business in the insurance and the banking sector, and new services in logistics and e-commerce field. And after 4 years, the company announced its first profit ever. The third is his role as a civil servant. In November 2011, under request of the Prime Minister of Italy, Mr. Mario Monti, who, as you know very well, is the president of Bocconi, Mr. Passera joined the technical government as the Minister of Economic Development, Infrastructures and Transportation. It was a quite difficult period for our country. As a minister, he prioritized the long-neglected policies, such as the new national energy strategy, the mobilization of about 50 billion euros for key infrastructure projects, a new legal framework for startup companies. The recent story of Corrado Passera is related to entrepreneurship and the launch of a very successful startup. He is in fact the founder and CEO of Illimity Bank, an innovative new generation bank specialized in providing credit to SMEs with strong potential but restrictive financial structures. The bank uses the latest fintech development to offer a fully digital direct banking service for private individuals and companies and businesses. illimity was established in 2018 by the merger between Banca Interprovinciale and Spax, one of the biggest special purpose acquisition companies ever created in Europe. The enterprise raised equity of 600 million euros. Corrado Passera has been a manager, an entrepreneur, and in particular an innovator. And I am glad to mention that he was named Bocconi Alumnus of the Year in 2002. Bocconi Alumnus of the Year is a title awarded to alumni who excel in their commitment to Bocconi values. And for you, new students, and in particular for the students who are here today, but let me also welcome all the students who are connected now. You will have the great opportunity to ask your questions to our guest speaker after his speech. And well, I thank very much the rector and Mr. Passera, and I couldn't think of a better way to open this new edition of our Master of Science programs. And now I pass the floor to our rector, Professor Gianmario Verona.
Good evening to you all, guys. It is a real pleasure, and thanks first of all to Dean Carù that so kindly invited me and forced you to wait some more minutes before hearing the words of wisdom of our distinguished alumnus, Corrado Passera. So it is a distinct pleasure, not only because, as Professor Carù mentioned, you are clearly some of the brightest cohorts of bachelor students of the last year. Otherwise, you could have not been accepted to Bocconi University. But it's a pleasure also to see you physically here. The room is not packed because we are still, of course, complying by the rules. And it's important, let me remark this point, in order to continue being all together physically in presence with some kind of turnover until the government will give us the opportunity to be all present in class, to be vaccinated. So try really to do your best to respect, of course, the norm, to respect distancing, but also try to get the vaccine if you have not done it yet. If you have a green pass, it means that very probably you have, and it's very important that also you spread the voice to all the people on the campus in order to have really a great start of this fantastic academic year. I just want to spend a few words to remind you where you have landed. I guess that Dean Carù already mentioned most of the things, but let me highlight a couple of things that I like to say all the times, because the fortune of being a student at Bocconi University is to be in a cocoon cradle of the social sciences. There are beautiful universities in the world in which you have great experience in terms of different fields, very, very different fields. The luckiness of being here and to spend the next 2 years here is that you are in a context which is, first of all, a community, very close, very tight, which is devoted for 120 years to study the social sciences. Now, social sciences is just one portion of the broad field of science, and as the name goes, of course, it excludes the natural sciences. However, social sciences are some of the most important science in order to impact the world and in order to make the world better. As we have seen also recently with the pandemic and with what happened in these tragic 2 years, for which, of course, the problem is a biological problem. The medical doctors and all the scientists that work hard in different labs are crucial in order to come up with a vaccine, with treatments in order to cure this disease. But at the end, and as a matter of fact, it is also crucial to get an understanding of the big problems and the big decisions that we have to take. And all these decisions pertain to the broad field of social sciences. So even when we are dealing with the technological problems, with natural problems, then it's a matter of putting down all the issues and all the variables that have to do with social sciences. Now, clearly, there are two important social sciences, which are economics and business, but there are plenty of others that we nurture every single day here at Bocconi University and that have become crucial, particularly in the last 20 years. It's about legal studies, it's about political science, it's more and more about data and computer science. We are building in these days a department of computer science because, computing, is something that is crucial for your future jobs, as I'm sure also Mr. Passera will say, given that he has created one unicorn in the field of banking, finance, and of course, data science. So my first suggestion is to really try to take the opportunity to not simply be in your Master of Science, which for sure will have courses also that speak to other social sciences, but also take the opportunity of being in this context, because this context is very is very prolific in terms of understanding of the overall problems. Then, of course, this is a beautiful international university in a beautiful international city. I think Milan is probably, of course, I love Milan, and so for me is the most beautiful city in Europe, but more generally is a very international city with a lot of opportunity. Professor Carù mentioned that you can take advantage of all these great things like the design week, the fashion week, which starts right after. But more generally, I believe that it's very important that you get in touch with all the other 15,000 students in this campus. You are the rookies of the Master of Science. Master of Science incubate about 4,000 students. There are plenty of other more junior students that belong to the undergrad school, but there are also very senior students at Bocconi, because as you can see, we every year train 9,000 plus managers, executives, and policymakers, which at some point in time of their life decide to go back to campus in order to learn some new practice or to understand some of the new problems that characterize their jobs and their different industries. So try to get the opportunity not only to understand social sciences, but also to get acquainted with all these wonderful people. Then it's very important also to remind the legacy of Bocconi University. Corrado is an entrepreneur, has become an entrepreneur, has been a great executive and has become a great entrepreneur, but we have been founded by a super entrepreneur back in the 20th century. In 1902, this gentleman, which I like to call a sort of Jeff Bezos of the 1900s, that created these department stores that, of course, many other people created department stores at the time. Countries were pretty much separated in terms of trade and commerce, and so each of them became very famous within his own country. And this gentleman created Magazzini La Rinascente and became very rich, but also very wise. And he thought to give back to society by creating in Italy the first degree in economics and commerce, because he had this frustration, apparently, because he didn't know almost anything. He had to learn on the field the things about administration. And so he thought to get in touch with the city of Milan, with the then Commercio, and he got on board this Leopoldo Sabatini, which became the first president and rector of Bocconi University, and has created a curriculum which in many other parts of the world was embedded probably in the first business schools. Actually, Mr. Passera has in his curriculum the opportunity of having a bachelor at Bocconi, but also an MBA in Wharton, and Wharton was created, in fact, a few years before Bocconi University at the end of the 19th century. So this means that this gentleman was very innovative and very also careful for impact in society. And these are, in fact, the cornerstones of the values that since then we are trying to transfer every single day in our teaching, in our research, and also in the things that we do on campus. As I said, first of all, internationality. We want to be an international environment with a strong respect for diversity and inclusion. The opportunity of getting in touch with different culture, with different ideas, with different views is pretty crucial, of course, in these days. It's always been crucial, but it's even more crucial in these days when we hear what is happening in the tragic events of Afghanistan. We also have, for those of you who are religious, a multi-religious site where all the different types of religion get together. So I think this is something that characterizes the values of Bocconi, not to mention, as I said before, the strong input we have towards innovation and the importance for us of the impact to society. In these days, you know, this country is working hard in order to achieve this recovery and resilience plan, is doing it like many other countries in Europe. And again, the crucial words have to do with sustainability, so with the impact to society in different types of fields and different types of sectors. So whatever we try to do also when we teach is also to stimulate you in this direction. Being part of Bocconi University is a great opportunity because your impact in life and your also personal success, will depend on your skill, on your attitude, on the competencies that you will receive in this transformational journey, but also on the fortune of networking with the right people, like, for example, tonight, the opportunity of hearing the words of wisdom of a great executive and entrepreneur. And our community is huge. It's made of 120,000 plus members that belong to 67 different chapters around the world, from Australia till the United States, so including the entire world and all the continents. And it's currently chaired by a bachelor of 1993, of the class of 1993, Silvia Candiani, currently country manager of Microsoft Italia, and is a community which is fantastic because it provides a lot of opportunity also in terms of events and in terms of different activities. So again, the remark of Professor Carù of paying attention also to what happens around you also, you know, is very important in this case. And so please get in touch with also our community typically does. And again, never spend, never avoid the opportunity of taking part to important events that are run on our campus. Very bright and smart people oftentimes visit Europe and decide to come to Bocconi University to give a lecture, to share, of course, a specific view of the world. In the next few weeks, we're going to host the Think Tank 20, which is the appetizer of the G20, which will be hosted by Italy. And so here in this classroom, we're going to have 2 days with some of the most important European ministers and important world leaders that will talk a little bit about what the different think tanks around the world have thought for the G20 of this year. So in general, my suggestion is that you have to work hard on the assignments, to work hard on all the things that your professors will have to say, but remember that it's crucial also to exploit all the opportunities we offer within the campus. Last 2 things that I would like to remark is that you are here because you're very good and you have decided to choose a university which is top in its field. So we are top 5 in Europe and top 20 in the world according to the most important rankings. In this chart, I just put the 2 most famous ranking, the news ranking, Quacquarelli Sismond and US News. This is the case for Financial Times, The Economist, Bloomberg Business Week. Now, we are there because we work hard in order to have the best scientists on board and the best students on board. And we do the best in order to have the best scientists publish the top papers in top journals, but also to try, of course, to provide all the services that are required by our students in order to find the right job once they have concluded their Master of Science. So I'm saying this because this is clearly a dual game. We're trying to do the best, but you also have to be on board in that. So again, commit very hard, try to always raise your hand if things don't work pretty well, and we'll try to understand what's going on. But remember that this is really, you know, a dual game in which we try to serve the best what we can, but also you really need to help us in helping you. So to understand if there are any problems or if there is anything that we can do in order to improve some of the parts of these programs. And I'm so pleased to see, by the way, all the different directors of the Master of Sciences that are here tonight with us in order to upload the intervention of Mr. Passera. And given that he is the entrepreneur, I couldn't avoid ending up by remarking that in the last 2 years we have created an accelerator. And we have created an accelerator because I like to quote one of the most important rectors in the history of Harvard, who is Professor Larry Summers, who has also been in the Ministry of Treasury in the United States government, used to say to his students that it's much better to don't end up your master by occupying a job in the marketplace, but it's much better to end up your master by creating jobs in the marketplace. So I like to remark this sentence because Bocconi in the last 2 years has created an accelerator, which is Bocconi for Innovation. We have Nico Valentigato here, who is the managing director of the accelerator. So if in your minds there is some neurons that in the next 2 years comes up with a smart idea, remember that in Via Bocconi say we have this accelerator, and try to knock at the door and to see whether we can do something which is clearly not as important, as brilliant as illimity, but for sure something that probably one day will make another very important Bocconiano like Corrado Passera, that I kindly invite on the podium.
For your words, for your invitation. Thank you to all of you. It's a great honor. I'm saying that deeply. It's a pleasure to be here today in my university. Today, we are here to mark the start of another journey, your journey, the journey that you're about to embark. You all know how your journey started. Nobody knows where it will end, how it will end. That can be some sort of scary feeling, but at the same time, it's very exciting. Actually, this is what makes life unique and special. In your case, your journey includes, amongst other destinations, an important one: your mission to become leaders. It's an important statement. What you have chosen to study and the prestigious university you have decided you have chosen to study in gives you the right to aspire towards this goal, become leaders. The ruling class worldwide, but especially in Italy, have inherited a bad reputation. Let's keep that in mind. When it comes not to being able to measure up to the task that history assigned them. And that is particularly true in our country, since our country, Italy, was formed all the way through the decades leading up to today. So if being here today guarantees you the right to aspire to become part of the ruling class, it, at the same time, also obliges you to take and earn responsibility for this goal. You must distinguish yourself from the leaders that came before you. You must find different principles to lead with and take different actions. You will have to navigate through the complexities of our time, which will face rapid acceleration. You will have to equip yourself with the appropriate cultural tools, first of all, and untraditional experiences. Your journey is beginning during uncertain times that are unprecedented and further exasperated by the serious healthcare crisis we went through. The profound uncertainty that has worn down our community has deep roots, and its effects are both rational and irrational. The well-being and lifestyle that we enjoy is at risk. The work is at risk, or at least some of the jobs, some of the traditional jobs. Social welfare, sort of established principle, but too is at risk. Global peace is at risk. The planet is at risk. And some of the political and social aggravations that have been, that are in front of us have been triggered by these fears. And we have to take that into account, because so far these fears have not been counterbalanced by leaders capable to create trust, to convey the message of hope, and first of all, to design plans and vision capable to overcome such fears. These increasing uncertainties that will continue to grow also due to digitizations, there is a call on us to sort of build totally new mind frames. We have to put together new technologies, but at the same time with the sensibilities, the humanistic sensibilities that have to integrate amongst themselves. We need, if we want to use the word of Teilhard de Chardin, a new noosphere, a new mindset, and you're here for that. New leaders are being called upon to build new role for our country. And now I'm talking especially to Italian students, but that is true also for each of us in thinking to your own country. But if you want to create a sustainable future for your country, first of all, you have to have an overall understanding of your country. You have to know your past, the past of your country. And I'm saying that because, at least in Italy, we are not very good at studying history. And don't end up your university studies without devoting some time to the understanding of the historical perspective of our problems and of our duties. Our future will inevitably be located in a globalized world, with international powers competing against each other. It's a sort of G0 world. Was not the case until a few years ago, but we have to get accustomed to a scenario where global powers compete against each other, and a new balance has to be looked for. And let's hope that this competition will be focused and limited to the cultural world, to the economic world, and will not fall into the military one. It's clear to all of us that for all the European countries, certainly for Italy, the future, a future of well-being, a future of freedom, can only be placed in a European Union that starts behaving like a global power, that as of today is not the case. Let's get back to leaders and ruling classes. Which are the main characteristics of leaders and ruling classes that are really useful? I don't think it's necessary to stress here the importance of competence and the respect for meritocracy, but always remember the value of merit. Be, all of you, each of you, its testimonial and advocate for it, both in the big and in the small, in the tiny decisions that you will take every day. Especially when you will select and yet you will manage your team members. Keep in mind that your results will be affected much more by the quality, the motivation of your team, much more than directly by your personal skills. And now a message that I want you to keep in mind if you want. But you cannot consider yourself a leader until you start creating new leaders, until you start helping to grow other leaders around you. My best definition of leadership, my best definition of what a leader is, and I will leave it to you, is this one. A leader is someone who creates other leaders. Obviously, what I'm saying doesn't mean that the technical skills you have acquired and you will acquire in the next 2 years will not be important. Actually, they will be fundamental, and you will have a great advantage versus most of your peers, thanks to the choice you have done in terms of university. However, you must be aware that some of the skills that will be crucial in your life will not be learnable during the university years. They will be developed during your life in the field. And most of them are more emotional kind of skills. And the most important one, which is the most important one? The capability, the ability to navigate and manage change. Today and tomorrow, leaders will face a very difficult challenge, and this challenge is to take their teams across very stormy waters towards realities that are uncharted, that are unknown. And sometimes when you cross the river, you find territories that surprise you even more than the people you were leading toward that destination. Managing change is much more than a rational process, because it means appealing to the head, to the heart, and to the gut of the people. As a prerequisite of any major change, there is the capability to imagine, to demonstrate to our people a future for which is worth making the most, break your back if necessary. Leaders need to understand that managing change means managing the anxieties of people. Talk to their head, talk to them rationally, but it's not enough. Take into account that they are deeply affected emotionally by the change you are trying to accomplish. And if you want to manage change, you have to be courageous, because those who undermine changes, the enemies of change, are often many and very strong. Leaders that want to be useful, we're talking about useful leaders tonight. Leaders that want to be useful unite. They do not divide and continually put up a fight about everything. They know how to understand diversity and how diversity combines with other kinds of diversity. Not only it's a matter of being tolerant. Tolerant is just the beginning. You have to love diversity. You have to ask for different opinions. You have to ask for dissent, because innovation generally comes only through this process. Always look for synergies, even when you have to combine conflicting values. This point of the conflicting values is something that the more you will have experience, the more you will understand how important it is. Look at what is happening in our society. It's becoming increasingly divided and polarized everywhere, no matter where. That's the case, because these societies, are not capable to find a balance between apparently conflicting values. Why should we choose between freedom and equality? Why should we choose between merit and solidarity? Why should we consider incompatible faith and secularism, identity and openness? But that is the case today. And our societies are badly divided and polarized with a number of political and social consequences because we keep considering these values incompatible. But this incompatibility is only apparent because freedom cannot exist without equality. Merit cannot hold value without taking care of fragility. And there can be no cohabitation among civilizations without strong personal identities and respect for your origins. We are the others. We are made of many different things. And if I can use the word that Freud said several times, we have an inner parliament with everything inside ourselves. All of this has to be pursued not only in words, but by example. The greatest ingredient in building trust in families, in companies, in societies is example, is being and living what you're saying as an example. Each of us is responsible for what we choose to do and not to do. We are responsible not so much for what we say, but only for what we do. It's only by making this commitment that today's leaders will rediscover a positive idea of ambition. That's the second concept, which has nothing to do with arrogance. Remember that there is nothing wrong with being ambitious, quite the opposite. We have to be more ambitious even at the national level. And here let me just talk for a while, just for a few minutes, more focusedly with our Italian friends. Way too often we underestimate our country's potential, and that might be true also in other countries, and our role in achieving its potential. Too many times we indulge in making a mockery of Italy, an action that has become a national sport, typical of our people, and not only, let's say, normal people, also people in top positions, something that does not occur in other great nations. Too often we pass down the belief to new generation that in Italy is not possible. And so we look for excuses and alibis to justify our failures. Bureaucracy, corruption, unions, infrastructures. But we must proudly reject this self-indulgent and victimized narrative, above all, because it's false, it's not true. In Italy, it's possible to accomplish great things, and sometimes even faster and better than in other countries that enjoy a much more positive reputation. I have the pleasure of meeting people every day who prove me right, and I have learned through personal experience. And I want to mention 3 cases very, very, very rapidly. Antonella mentioned 3 great opportunities I was lucky to live personally, but these are evidences of what I'm saying. When we decided to redesign, to reimagine our postal service, 200,000 people, the sort of metaphor of inefficiency, almost everyone said it was not possible to turn such a bureaucracy into a company, a competitive company, capable of mutating its DNA. But the people of the company, those 200,000 people, decided to take their future in their hands and change the whole thing. It was a cultural challenge, it was an operational challenge, it was a financial challenge, but at the end, as Antonella was saying, the Italian post office became a worldwide positive example. Intesa San Paolo. Again, I'm saying these things only to give you the evidence of the wonderful kind of journey you have in front of you. When we started, we were a dynamic, yes, Antonella said that, but a small company, a small bank, a small regional bank. Thanks to a team of wonderful persons, both shareholders, board members, and managers, and the people of several dozens banks that we put together, we triggered a consolidation phase in the banking industry that at the end created one of the best banks in Europe. Intesa San Paolo is one of the best banks in Europe, and probably at the beginning of the exercise, it didn't take too long, 10 years. I mean, it's quite a long time, but at the same time, it's a very small time. I mean, in very few years, we proved that Italy could express one of the best banks in Italy. Just one word about illimity, because I'm very proud. When I was minister, I wanted to make this startup bill to make easier for young or not young people to create new companies. And we created, Gianmario was mentioning it, we created from scratch a bank that 2.5 years ago, it was a bit more than a PowerPoint presentation. Today, we are 700 people, coming from 203 different organizations, mostly not from banks. We are growing, we're profitable. But what is more important, and keep, if you want, this message in mind, making money, making profits is not enough to create a strong identity in a company. You have to feel and to prove that you are useful. We are proud of being useful. We engage in those kind of credit activities for SMEs that most other banks underserve, ignore in most cases. Companies with strong potential but still second tier, let's say. Companies that run into trouble but have the potential, the will to get back on tracks. Or even situations that are very bad but where there is still some value to extract, some situations to help blossoming. These three cases, in these three cases, I try to apply the same formula, and it's very easy. People and innovation. These are, at least in my opinion, the two components of the winning formula almost everywhere, probably everywhere. And let's have just a few words about success. Because to be a good leader, you must love success. My point to you tonight is that you must not only love your success, but you have also to love other people's success. Why I'm saying that? Because there is a syndrome. It's called tall puppy syndrome that is very negative. And it's a bad habit that I see in many countries. What is the tall or top poppy syndrome? The poppy that grows the highest tend to be cut by the others. while should not be cut down. Instead, they should be admired, they should be emulated, they should be supported, because they represent a positive example. They represent the evidence that those kind of things can be done. But tall poppy syndrome, put it in your pocket. It will be useful in the future, because it's a virus that must not infect you. You have to love your success, but also the success of your community, of other players in your town, in your country. So we are designing, we are profiling the kind of leaders and the kind of ruling classes that are useful. But you will also be called upon to do something even more difficult. We have to steer our capitalistic system in new directions. Make capitalism evolve, not cancel or close it or break it or stop it. Make it evolve. This is very important. And there are three main directions to take, and three directions where both the public world and the private world have to work together, and where we all have to consider ourselves interconnected in achieving this change. We need a capitalism that is more socially responsible, and the excesses of a system that by its very nature tends to deepen inequalities and permits high level of hardship have to be corrected. But we have the tools, we have the instruments. Education, social welfare, meritocracy. These are some of the best instruments to make our capitalism more socially responsible. We need a capitalism that is more ecologically responsible. What does it mean? We have to manage our planet in such a way that our children will receive something better, something stronger, something more sustainable than what we inherited. And as of today, this is not the case. Third, we need and we want a capitalism that is more financially responsible. Finance is not an end in itself. The explosion of debt has to be managed. The concentration of financial power has to be mitigated through rules and sanctions, both legal ones and social ones. This is probably not the case. A lot of people talk about these goals, but we have to be reasonable and say that we are not even applying the rules that we have given to our system. Are we applying the antitrust regulation in the world? Certainly not in the States. Are we applying the privacy law philosophy to our personal life? Are we defended from the incursions of the tech giants? Certainly not. Are we really fighting against legal events? Words, but certainly few actions. The last point is about common good. Leaderships, so leaders, yourself, ourselves, all of us, have to be responsible for the creation of common good. What is common good and why am I talking about that? You might consider yourself future managers, entrepreneurs, and maybe you think that the common good is something that has to be delegated to the state. I'm taking care of my company. I'm taking care of maximizing my profits. Someone else has to manage the common good. That's not the case. There is a sort of bug, philosophical bug, ideological bug, when we talk about common interest. Because there is an ideology, because it's not what Adam Smith said, that says that if you pursue, if you quest your interest, automatically a common good will come out from the combination of all these interests. It's a piece of it. Each of us has to take care of ourselves, of our family, of our company, for sure. But we have to devote part of our life also to this special value, this special thing that is common value. And even if they will say that Adam Smith said that just by combining individual interest, common good will come out. That's not true. It's a piece of it. Then you must add another combined responsibility, something that has to be shared with the rest of the society, because only by devoting part of your energy, part of your assets to common good will come. We are and that's a point that Edgar Morin said and made many times. We are part of a single global community. And as he said, we are all human beings united by a single world destiny that requires a new idea of salvation and fulfillment. I'm reading it because these are his words. Of course, as I said before, each of us needs to care about ourselves first, I said it, our family, our business, because like on an airplane, when something goes wrong, you need to secure your own oxygen mask before you can help others. And only if you are successful and complete as an individual, you can then take care of others more easily. But being part of the ruling class means giving back part of yourself, your action, your time, your success to the community. Today, there are so many ways one can choose to give back. In the private sector, also through associations, in the public sector, through non-profit organizations or NGOs, you choose one. But, always keep in mind that none of these words, the profit, the non-profit, and the public words, none of them has the monopoly of virtue, but the best things, the highest achievements are reached when these words combine and work together. Very last point. True leaders are capable of taking ownership of their responsibility. That is, they are ready to get their hands dirty. Because, as Pope Francis says, it is difficult to do good without getting your hands dirty. To do this, you need to have a passion for reality, facts, numbers, reality, as well as a spirit that I would call it a youthful spirit. And I'm not referring to a biological status, because at the end, after a while, it would finish, but as a state of mind. What is youthful spirit? Youth is the absolute love for freedom. And please, never, not even once, because once is enough to create problems, never exchange freedom for a piece of success. Youth is courage, courage winning over fear, never abandoning ideals, and above all, trusting yourself and others. Youth means being open to everything. And the kind of world where we are living and where we will live in the next years and decades needs this openness, availability to the unexpected. Time is up, and even if I would have a number of other things to say, I stop here. The last thought because it really refers to you, is the following. We are not born leaders. We learn how to become leaders. This is very important, because never believe to people who says that he's a born leader. Maybe there are some, but by doing what you're doing today at the university, and by accepting to go through a number of experiences, of successes and of failures, you will become the leader that are, as we said before, useful. So congratulations to all of you, and believe me, the best is yet to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. Such an inspiring speech. Thank you, really. I took some notes. I'm very touched. And, but I don't want to ask questions, and I would have some questions, but I would like to give the opportunity to ask a question to our students. And I don't know if there are students there.
Forse è meglio che togli, forse ti stanno dicendo che stiamo lontani.
Possiamo. We can stay. Okay.
So first of all, I'd like to thank you for your presentation. And I noticed that leadership was a very important theme within your speech. And you've had leading roles both in public and private companies and also in the government as Minister of Economic Development. So I was wondering, how did your experience differ between these two spheres, and what expertise were you able to transfer from one to the other?
I will use a couple of points I made during my first presentation. People and innovation are important, are key in both words. And let me add the third word, that is the private word, but the non-for-profit word, because I see the word as three different situations, and so the profit, the private profit, the private non-profit, and or impact, as we want to call it, and the public. But coming back to your question, I've been lucky because twice in my life I've been called to work on the other side of the moon, the public world. One was the post office, the most public organization in the country. And the second time as an emergency minister, as a minister in an emergency government. And in both cases, I realized that, what I said before, none of these words, none of these different words have the monopoly of virtues. Some things can be done more easily through public instruments. Probably we would have not fixed the post office if it were a listed company. Probably it would have failed. Probably the market would not have waited enough time to fix it. And that is something that we have to keep in mind, because the short sight of the market that is becoming even shorter and is really affecting the behavior of the companies is an illness, is a weakness of our system. Because rewarding investment, supporting companies that invest, that have vision, that are creating new models, is key to sustainable growth, while often being listed, being a public company, is a sort of constraint to what you do. So I believe that investment in innovation and investment in people are crucial in both. I realize that giving some years of your life to your country, to something that is certainly not directly profitable for you in the short term, gives an enormous positive feeling to yourself. And I hope that this mechanism of having people moving from the private world to the public world, or the other way around, and maybe more than once, is a way to bring the strengths of each of the components of our society into the others. For sure, the public world needs the entrepreneurial spirit, the organizational skills that the private world can bring, but for sure, the longer view, the more social perspective that the public world can bring also to corporations is something that boosts the long-term sustainability of companies.
Thank you. And I think that going back to your presentation, in any case, courage is a key word, because I think that both in the private and public sector, you need courage to deal with the challenges that are not easy to face and that are difficult to manage with under pressure, because there is a competition, or there are social issues and political issues. And I think that courage and being strong is one of the most relevant feature.
May I comment it a second?
Yes.
Because maybe it can be useful to all of you to keep in mind for the future 3 different kinds of courages that are badly needed in the companies and in the society. And you will probably experience them because you will become leaders in many situations. The first one is the courage to decide. Companies that are successful are companies where the decision process makes decisions. There are companies that take too long, or do not take decision, or postpone decisions, and these are not successful companies. And generally, at the end, the responsibility of the final decision is with the chief executive officer or the manager, if we are talking about a division, etc. So courage to decide. Select your bosses at the beginning, and then select your people when you are the boss, according to this capability, because it's not a highly available raw material. The second is the courage I mentioned before. When you want to change, you find people that maybe in talking to you or in talking in public support the idea of change, the idea of innovation, the idea of new paradigm, but actually is against. Because the present situations, no matter where, no matter in which industry, that maybe is negative for the system is positive or useful or profitable for someone. And often, when you manage big things, there are big interests in keeping the situation the way it is. And then you have 2 choices. You accept the rule of the game, the present rule of the game, and you lose your freedom, or you go ahead. That doesn't mean go and hit the wall with your head, but find a way to overcome these reaction, these obstacles, and that sometimes needs courage. The more you raise in the hierarchy, the more courage sometimes is needed to balance the enemies of change. And this is the second courage. The third, and it's maybe a courage that you will have to use early in your career, is the courage to say no. Not necessarily to illegal or bad things, but to say no to jobs that maybe are rich in terms of money, but are jobs where you do not learn, you do not invest in yourself, you do not build your career. Sometimes saying the word N-O, no, it's difficult, but sometimes saves your life, and in many cases keeps your freedom, your liberty to point much higher afterwards.
Thank you. Other questions? One raised hand here.
Qui c'è una...
Now the students in the third...
Se le ha il microfono...
there are many questions. Sorry, I didn't realize, but okay. Other?
Okay. So first of all, obviously, thank you for your speech.
Where are you?
I can't see you. There, sorry. Okay.
I can't get up, apparently. Can I?
No, thank you.
Can I get up? Okay. So yeah, I was saying, obviously, thank you for your speech. Secondly, correct me if I misheard you, but like you highlighted that being successful is somewhat a prerequisite to give back to the community. At first, until last year, I thought it was true, but then I began volunteering, especially to gather signatures for the referendum to legalize euthanasia, and I realized there that most of the other volunteers are middle class and doing relatively normal jobs, average jobs, not people that one could consider truly successful. So how can your concept of giving back to the community come to terms with this, let's say, reality? Thank you.
It's a very good question, and probably I did not express my point properly. I did not mean to say that only if you are successful from an economic or a career point of view, you can be of use for the rest of the society. Never in my life I would say something like that. But what I'm saying is that the stronger you are, the most you invest in yourself, the more solid you are, the more you can give back to others. And sometimes people believe that since they are successful, since they have already achieved such incredible task and results, they have already done enough for the rest of the society. My point is that the more successful you are, the more responsible you are for giving back more to the society. But the other point I wanted to make, and I think is right, is that there is no negative connotation in taking care of your own family, your own company. But what I was trying to say is that you have to find also some room for something that is not yourself, your family, your company, but it's your community. And you can choose where, and you mentioned an example that is very, very well chosen. In our country, we have 5 million people that are engaged in non-profit NGOs kind of activities, and it is because of them that a lot of sorrow, that a lot of problems, that a lot of life complexities are managed. But it's almost the opposite of what might have looked. The more you're successful, the more you can go and you can give back to the society.
And probably you should give. The more you should give to the society. Thank you. And I saw before here a question, and if you can raise your hand, I can identify who is going to ask. Now she is.
Okay, so you stressed during your speech that we need to learn how to be leaders, so we need to study and work hard. But you know that learning is a process that goes through success, but also failure. It's a trial and error in which you try to build yourself and to shape yourself professionally and emotionally. So my question is, what would you tell us that are young in order to help us in handling failure? What's your handling failure in our process of learning?
Obviously, there are not rules that are valid for everyone, but I strongly believe in the point I'm about to make. There are many ways to be happy in life from a professional point of view. You can be a super specialist, a specialist. You can be a manager of people up to the level of becoming a leader. And they are both very useful ways to help yourself and to help the society. If you want to be a specialist, obviously you have to follow a very focused kind of career. You have to find the best way to increase the quality of your specialization, and that's one. The other one, and I was obviously referring more to the leading kind of roles, entrepreneurs, public administrators, managers, people that manage other people, that lead other people. The recipe for learning, for creating such a competence is a bit different, because generally it helps if you do different things, if you operate in different industries, in different functions, if you have the courage to start from scratch more than once. It's a more risky kind of strategy, personal strategy. You cannot plan it, because life can only be partially planned. You can plan your studies, but it's almost impossible to plan the subsequent steps in your career. But for sure that if you feel inside yourself the nice feeling that comes from helping others, managing others, leading others, then different experiences in different sectors, in different industries, in different positions is very important. Obviously, that needs some more courage, because you leave your comfort zones more than once, and you have to start again in areas where you are a newcomer. But the combination of different experiences and different expertises at the end gives you a much larger perspective and helps you in becoming a stronger leader. Obviously, if you do a number of things and you start more than once from scratch, you increase the probability of failing, of making errors, of falling. And I'm not saying that it's a nice feeling when you fail, because it's not. But I can tell you my experience. I had a number of nice experiences in banking, also in other industries that were not mentioned before. And at a certain point, after the government experience, I decided to try a political project. Probably it was sort of arrogance, because I had succeeded almost everywhere before. And then I probably took that decision with probably not enough humility, and I failed, but in a major way. And that was really a bad feeling. I found myself in trouble, because like in any other previous lives, I put also in that life, in that experience all myself. So failing found me at the end in a very difficult situations, but at the same time, that failure created an energy that probably was the trigger of the entrepreneurial experiment, venture that I decided to take afterwards. So be ready to fail, be ready to make mistakes, consider it normal. Nobody lives all his life without mistakes or failures. It's part of life and can really be an energizer of your life. Sounds theoretical, but believe me, is very practical.
If I may take a shorter perspective, I can say that in the next 2 years, you will have the opportunity to fail. Let me explain what I mean. You have to try to do your best to succeed in exams, in your academic career, but don't fear about failing, because it's a sort of, there are 2 years where you can learn how to deal with challenges, how to manage your stress, how to manage your difficulties. And this will support you, will help you to face the job market in a more conscious way. I recommend that it may happen that you fail for one exam, or you don't get the grade that you expected. Okay, the most relevant attitude is to try to understand what happened. It's not a tragedy. It may happen, and in the next 2 years, you can learn also how to manage your fail and your mistakes, and to recognize them, and to be more conscious about your strength and your features. And it's 8 o'clock almost, and I think that you can have another question. The very last one, well, we have two from this side, one from that, and I saw a raised hand in the center.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for your speech. So my question, I guess, builds on your thread about change, but more concretely on your current experience with illimity Bank. So looking at the Italian banking sector in specific, do you think that in the future, say, old school traditional banks will be able to coexist in a way with digital banks? Considering, for example, the relatively low level of digital literacy and the skepticism towards new technology that exists in relevant parts of the population? Or do you think that traditional banks will be forced to become digital themselves to be able to survive and compete with all of those banks that use AI and technology extensively in their core business? Thank you.
Actually, the diffusion of digital technologies in everyday life, both in the business world and in the retail, in the society in general, is growing very rapidly, and the delay of which we were suffering versus other countries is smaller and smaller. As far as the banking industry, really everything is changing because of the combination of four forces that is really changing, reshaping the industry. The digital technologies are certainly the first force, but regulation is at least as important. The entry into the financial services industry by other companies from other industries is something that was unimaginable until a few years ago. Look at what is happening. Financial services, most of them, the easy ones, the standardized ones, are today provided by any kind of companies, retailers, telecom companies, any kind, big tech, fintech. If you add the monetary policies that have brought down to zero market yields, I mean, you see that the P&L and also the balance sheet, but certainly the P&L of traditional banks cannot sustain themselves anymore. So the answer is what? Then what? Generally, we believe that there are only two ways to cope with such a challenge. One is consolidation. You get bigger, you have more money to invest in innovation, you can pay for your cost more easily, and that's certainly one direction. Many countries, not all European countries, but most countries, and Italy is included in this list, have done a lot of work in this respect. We used to be 1,000 banks, we are less than 100 today, so the consolidation is underway. And second direction is specialization. Illimity is an example. You do only one thing, or few things, in an excellent way. You use new technologies, you are native, we are cloud native, we have an IT system that is fully digital, fully modular, et cetera, et cetera. So you certainly can assume that in the next decades, we will have a number of specialized, no legacy kind of banks. But these two directions probably leave a good part of the industry with the question you were making unanswered. And probably we have to find a way, and some ideas are coming, to bring deep injections of innovation also to small and medium-sized banks that are not part of big groups. But innovation is the common denominator of the three directions: consolidation, specialization, and transformation of traditional models, but through injections of innovation. So this is what I expect. The others will have big troubles.
Okay. Leadership, innovation, and I want really to thank our guest speaker and also the rector for this amazing welcome. And to all of you, I wish all the best for your future, and in particular, I wish you to enjoy the next 2 years at Bocconi. And good luck, dear students. And this is a present for you, because you have to remember this moment,
Thank you very
this
much.
special moment with us. Thank you.